Right, I'm Lorraine Brown. I've lived in Calverton since 1984. I work for Gedling Borough Council as the events and play officer, and I have done for 24 years. I have two dogs that are boxers, one that you can probably hear in the background. I have a son, Jack, who's 27, who has come back home to live because he unfortunately has initially made furloughed but now been made redundant. So he's back home, but the good news is he's been accepted at Hull University to do a master's degree. So he's going to concentrate all efforts this year on doing that. I have lived, like I say, in Calverton since 1984. Originally from Southwell, so I'm used to small rural village areas. I'm a keen gardener, started a new hobby of photography, and enjoy dog walking. Used to have a horse, so I'm very much an outdoors person. Favourite footwear, wellies. The first time I actually heard about the COVID was all the media reports about the contamination, people eating bats, and because I am a big animal welfare person, I was more interested in that side of things as to how people could go out and kill wild animals and eat wild animals.
Thanks, Steve.
So initially it was that angle that interested me more than anything, because I just assumed it was some kind of virus that just affected certain, probably the older community. And it was only when the media started to get more and more reporting on, not just from this country but from other countries, that this is not something that's going to go away next week. But it really hit home for me when I went into work on the Wednesday, the 16th, 17th of March, and was told to pick up my laptop and go home, because I would be working from home from now on, as I was classed as a high risk due to having had chemo several years ago for breast cancer. So I picked up all my belongings and the little cardboard box, my laptop, and brought it all home. And that is really when it hit home as to what the extent, as to how severe things were. The first afternoon, it was, oh, yippee-doo-dah, all this time at home, what am I going to do? So I took my dogs for a walk. I just generally pottered about. On the Thursday, I got the laptop set upstairs and sorted the office. So I had somewhere to work from. I got all my files ready. I checked my emails and there was nothing. So I kept thinking, well, something's going to come through. But because my job is events and play, all the events potentially have been cancelled. So I didn't have any events to organise. So I had to wait for confirmation from my line manager that there would be no events. So for 2 days I was on the phone ringing people who I'd booked, explaining to groups that the play days are cancelled, and I would let them know if that changed. All the suppliers, the contractors, invoices or purchase orders that had been raised had to be cancelled or postponed. Those people who I book that have a clause in if you cancel before a certain amount of time, because we didn't know if the events were actually going to go ahead, I had to talk to them to make sure they would be happy to leave the booking open, but I would let them know as soon as it was definitely we're not going ahead or we are going ahead. So for probably the rest of that week, I was really, really busy. Then it got to the weekend, and I drew up a to-do list of absolutely everything that I wanted to do in and around the house and the garden, ranging from silly things like painting the kitchen to moving some garden pots to cleaning out the pond, to cleaning the medicine cupboard. I just wrote everything down, and there were about 5 pages. And I aimed to do 1 a week. I ended up doing about 4 a day because I was so bored. For the first bit of lockdown, when we were told, you know, I had to stay at home, I couldn't really go out. I was doing probably 2.5, 3 hours in the morning with the dogs. I was going up into, we've got a wildlife area in the edge of the village, and I was going up there probably 2-3 hours, 4, 5, 6 mile walks. The dogs really had no idea what had hit them because they're used to seeing me in the morning, take them for 40 minutes, and then they sleep all day. Like you can probably hear one snoring in the background now, which is a box of treats. And then come home at night, give them the tea, again a 40-minute walk, Saturday and Sunday, 2-3 hour walks, but this started to be every single day. So I was getting fitter, a lot more exercise, and so were the dogs.
Cool.
Mental health definitely suffered because I was not in contact. The only person I was speaking to is my son, and 27, does he really want to be spending all that time with his mum? My partner, who doesn't actually live with me, has had a triple heart bypass and suffers from diabetes. So he was also at home, but he was still working. So we would liaise, email, messenger, phone, text, and that was okay. I could get by, but I desperately needed something to keep me busy. I'm also a local parish councillor, so I was trying to do a lot more background information research on certain projects within the village that we're looking at doing. But again, I couldn't liaise with anyone. There were no meetings, so I was having to do everything by email, and it was just taking so long. So I did find that the lack of communication with anybody, work colleagues, friends, it was quite, it didn't push me over the edge. It didn't affect me, so to speak, but you're used to having that contact and all of a sudden it's not there, or it is there through a different media. It was a bit strange.
Well, I mean, you've been used to going into an office every day,
Yes.
talking to people, seeing your friends, seeing your partner,
Yeah.
and suddenly it's you and 4 walls and Mr. Snoring Pants here.
Yes.
So what was it like not seeing your partner for that long?
It was, for the first couple of weeks, I was too busy doing my to-do list. Peter was working, so it was fine. It didn't really faze me at all. And then probably 3 weeks after, he was told that he would have to work from home. So because he was working from home, we agreed that we would meet in the woods and we would walk the dogs, and then he would take the dogs home with him for 2 days, and then we would meet in the dogs and I would bring the dogs back. So that was purely so that he could have company and, of course, exercise. That worked really well. We did that for about 3-4 weeks as well. There was obviously no contact. We did keep I went in my car, he went in his car. So that kept us sane. So we did that for, like I say, 3-4 weeks. Jack was in the process of buying a house, and he'd put an offer in on a house in April. So he was living here. And then, of course, when this happened, then he had to take the offer back because work had told him there was potential upheaval. So he took advice and just said to the estate agent, I think really I'm just going to hang fire. So the estate agent passed it on to the person selling the house and they said fine. which is a good job because a couple of weeks later Jack was put on furlough, and then at the end of June he was made redundant. So he's back here permanent, which was nice because you'd got somebody that you could talk to. He would come with me walking the dogs. We'd potter around in the garden. We're quite close anyway, but there were times when he needed his space just as much as I needed my space.
I guess, given that you're an events officer and the state of play at the minute in terms of events and that kind of thing, I'm guessing it's quite an uncertain future for you as well.
Yes. Fortunately, the Economic Development Department needed some additional help. I'd worked for them last year on the Arnold Market project. So they asked if I could do some research. So since end of April, I've also been doing work for them. So if any work's come in through my usual department, then I've done that work, but I've also done some work for them. The next phase that I will be doing is now I'm allowed, or we're allowed to go out. I did a registration of all business units in the borough. So I now will go out to those business sites, mainly the industrial units, and just check that the information I've got tallies with what's there. So that'll be something to keep me amused, but I need decent weather to do that.
Does the thought of going out again scare you? Or are you fairly robust
No,
in terms of...
It's never scared me. Never scared me at all. Even when I've gone shopping, I've taken a mask. If I've had to wear a mask, then I've wore it. I don't particularly like it because it's cotton and it does tend to make you a bit... But I haven't been into Nottingham. I've been into Arnold a couple of times. I've been to the coast, went to Skeggy 2 weeks ago with the dogs, which was absolutely packed. And I must admit, when I got out the car, I actually said to Peter, I feel scared because there's so many people here. And from having gone for walks before and probably not seen a soul, to suddenly there's hundreds and hundreds of people all congregating, all stood talking, chatting, no face masks whatsoever. It did scare me, but I just avoided the crowds. We just carried on. So I haven't been worried, I haven't been scared all the way through. Even though I know I'm supposed to potentially I'm a high risk, but I've been okay.
Good.
Touch wood.
Good. Yeah.
I would say it's made me reflect, take stock of what I have got, what I haven't got, what I need, what I want. Do I really want a full-time job? Do I really want the pressure? Do I really just want people around me that are my immediate family, those close friends? It's all very well having the acquaintances that you can pick up the phone and say, hi, not spoke to you for a long time, but really they're not that important in the grand scheme of things. I would love to get back to work, but I know that my job will be completely different. If I can work from home, I would like to continue working from home. I don't really want the pressure of the events anymore. That was a huge decision that I took probably 4 weeks ago. Usually I thrive on the events. For 18 years I've organised the Arnold Carnival, which is a huge job. There was only myself, and then it was handed over to Nottingham City to deliver, and I was so upset and so disappointed. But now if it came back, I would, hand on heart, I would have to say, I really don't want the pressure anymore. I don't want it. I miss my play days. I loved organising the play days. But realistically, I think I'd be happy just possibly pottering around. So if and I hope the employees don't watch this. So if they do turn around and say, I'm sorry, we are making your post redundant, it wouldn't come as a huge shock. And I think I would accept and say that that's fine, and just look for something that perhaps had a couple of days a week where I could still keep my hand in, because I am an organiser, and I think I would be frustrated if I hadn't got anything to organise here at home. Or even if I just went to, I don't know, work at Sainsbury's or work somewhere, just so that I was with people. But it wouldn't come as a complete shock if my post was deleted.
Do you think you would have said that 6 months ago, all of that, or do you think that's very different now you've kind of had time to step away from it?
Absolutely not. 6 months ago, if there was any, the slightest glimmer that the carnival or anything would come back, then I would have done everything within my power to make sure that it did come back and that we did retain that certainly that event, because it was an event that I loved to do. But now I think having had time to think, reflect, quite honestly, hand on heart, it's changed. It's made a huge change that I didn't think it would. So I would be more than happy just to potter around home.
It was such a shockwave, and it's been so awful. But equally, I kind of get that sense that people are starting to take positives from it in terms of that.
Definitely,
it's forced everybody to stop. And
definitely,
to reflect. It really has.
It's been a very interesting few months. I think the only thing that I was slightly disappointed was that the hospital, I didn't get a letter saying you are one at risk. It was just that my employer said you need to go home. I've had nothing from the hospital saying whether I am at risk. I think I would have liked that reassurance, but then again, my chemo was 4 or 5 years ago, so just that little bit of information that would have said, you know, if you had chemo up to 2 years ago, you are at risk, but anything more than that, you sort of like carry on as normal-ish. I think that is the only underlying thing, because obviously once you've had cancer, you think it's going to come back one day, and if it does come back and it comes back now, what am I going to do? You know, how am I going to get the help that I need? But you obviously don't think about that every day. It's just in those dark moments. But apart from that, no, it's been a very interesting few months. I've achieved a lot that I wanted to do, made some big decisions that really have needed to be made for probably 3, 4, 5 years. And I've managed to paint my kitchen, which is good. So yeah.